Welcome to our Partnership for National Unity press conference for December 12th, 2025. I am your moderator, Ms. Shanika Haynes. Joining today's press conference is Mr. Aubrey C. Norton, leader of the People's National Congress Reform and the Partnership for National Unity, and Mr. Ronald Daniels, attorney at law and national candidate for Partnership for National Unity. Today's press statement will be read in two parts, and we will begin with the leader.
Public servants must get a minimum 25% wage and salary increase. In addition to the package of benefits and initiatives APNU offered in its 2025 manifesto to support businesses and citizens, we are highlighting at this crucial juncture an urgent need of public servants. Following is a reasonable argument that any public servant would make with regard to the much needed compensation they require. The following figures that will be used are based on monthly salaries reported in late 2024 and 2025. The president earns approximately $34,800,000 per year, which translates to $2.9 million monthly. The ministers and leader of the opposition earn approximately $21,600,000 a year, which works out approximately $1.8 million monthly, including benefits. By contrast, general public servants earn a minimum of $100,000 per month. That is $1,200,000 annually by the end of 2025. What this means is that the minister earns in 1 month more than what the average public servant worker earns in a year. The president earns 3 times the wages and salaries of a public servant in 1 month. This comparison shows a wide gap between the earnings of the government elite and the statutory minimum earning of public servants, formal sector workers, and informal sector earners alike have felt the effects of stifling low wages and salaries and rising costs. Public servants carry the burden that while national wealth is rising, their purchasing power is collapsing. The call is for more money to public servants with the aim of narrowing the gap between the government elite and public servants. Second, Guyana's oil production and sector activities have expanded very quickly. Official reporting and government projections point to rapid increases in daily output and project ramp-ups through the remainder of this decade. Government sources and industry reports show production and revenue growth that position Guyana to benefit materially from the Stabroek Block development and related projects. The government expects total revenue to reach $1,024.5 billion in 2025, an increase of 30.5% over the $784.6 billion reported in 2024. Yet workers are being offered a ridiculously low 8% increase in 2025. At the same time, private oil companies have reported very large revenues and cash flows tied to Guyana's operations. Citizens legitimately expect the state to transfer an equitable share of the revenue into durable investment in public sector wages. Third, the APNU had previously outlined a graduated 35% increase in public sector wages in our 2025 manifesto. Given the government elite and public sector minimum wage disparity and the current and projected growth in oil revenue and the high cost of living, APNU now calls on the government to deliver a minimum of 25% increase in public servant wages to restore purchasing power for state employees and help boost the non-oil economy. Our previously articulated policy positions were in anticipation of the pressures public servants are facing today. the need for fair compensation has grown even more urgent. Part of the rationale includes one, restoring purchasing power. Many public servants have seen real earnings decline in the face of inflation and higher living costs. Delivering social fairness, if oil revenues are expanding, a portion must be used to fund equitable compensation for those who deliver core public service. Three, stimulating the domestic economy. Increased public wages would help support local businesses and consumption in the short term. Four, retaining talent. Competitive public sector pay is critical to retaining skilled staff required to manage expanded public investment and regulatory duties tied to the oil economy. Five, estimated fiscal impact. The government's own reporting estimated total wages and salaries in the public sector approximately Guyana 227 billion by the end of 2025. A uniform 25% increase on that base would raise the annual wage bill by about Guyana dollars 56.75 billion to 283.75 billion. That is affordable.
Mr. Daniels?
There are several issues affecting young Guyanese and the broader workforce. Many young people, early career workers, students, and recent graduates are experiencing alarming economic difficulties and uncertainty that demand public policy attention. The APNU's interactions with young people prove that they are affected by government's policies which disregard their prevailing challenges. Among the most commonly reported challenges experienced by young people are the rising cost of living compared to wages and savings, including food, rent, and imported goods, underemployment and the mismatch between education or skills and available work opportunities, uneven distribution of economic gains from the rapid growth sectors, which has left visible pockets of prosperity compared to communities still lacking adequate services. Many youths report that corruption, favoritism, and politically connected awards of contracts undermine government transparency. These, they contend, cause the oil revenues to not trickle down to improve their everyday lives. There are other areas of public dissatisfaction among young people, including unreliable energy, delays in major development projects such as sport facilities, and poor industry-wide service quality, despite our significant revenues that immediately cater to these. Young people are simply seeking merit-based opportunities, not the existing disenchantment, not the manner of growth that is influenced by party affiliation. They want fairness and for their capabilities to count for something. Some young people have been complaining to us that many lucrative opportunities are only advertised after PPP insiders are notified and identified to fill these slots. The public advertisement then becomes merely academic. The APNU strongly rejects this practice when and where it exists and calls for the establishment of mechanisms to ensure fairness and transparency. Our oil wealth has created expectations that have not translated into tangible individual prosperity. No Guyanese should be made to feel poor while unemployed. Oh, forgive me, no Guyanese should be made to feel poorer while employed. These are matters of national interest among our youth. APNU calls for immediate evidence-based measures that restore confidence, transparent use of oil revenues, clear job creation plans tied to vocational and tertiary training, and targeted social protection for youth and families in acute need so that economic growth delivers real, sustained, and measurable improvement of the quality of life of young people, our elderly, and the most vulnerable in our society. There's also need for transparency on the broken cash transfer promise. The APNU repeats its concerns at the continued disregard of the government to deliver on an officially announced cash transfer to Guyanese people, which should be delivered before Christmas. We have noted the vulgar manner in which this promise was made. If you behave yourself, you get it this year. It appears that this was indeed just a shallow and disrespectful election gimmick. At this 11th hour, there are yet to be any specifics or timeline for the cash transfer to the Guyanese people. Promises of direct support made during elections must be honored, and the APNU stands firm in its demand for clarity and accountability. Families that planned and budgeted based on that promise deserve immediate factual update. If the PPP never intended to fulfill the promise, it should not have made it in the first place. At the very least, however, the PPP should be transparent and honest with the people instead of holding them at ransom for a cash grant. If it intends to proceed, then the belated concrete public timetable for payment must be immediately disclosed to the Guyanese people. The failure to honor this commitment has intensified the pressures upon families already struggling with high and rising commodity prices, and it has deepened public distrust in the management of national resources at a time when Guyana's fiscal picture is positively and rapidly changing. APNU's public protests on Monday, December 8, 2025, demonstrated our continued solidarity with the Guyanese people and our sustained commitment to hold the PPP's duplicity in sharp focus. Our protest has amplified public discussion, highlighted widespread frustration, and emphasized the urgency of addressing the cash transfer issue. APNU will continue to advocate on this issue until the PPP is forced to comply. Guyana's oil wealth should be a turning point that lifts standards of living for all Guyanese, not a source of deeper inequality. The APNU stands for accountable management of national resources, for fair wages for public servants who deliver essential services, and for immediate relief for youth and our souls harmed by broken promises. Thank you.
Thank you. The floor is now open for questions on the first statement. And of course, you can do so by the raise of hand and stating your media house. Mr. Adam Harris.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning, all.
Good morning.
Morning.
A question for both the Comrade Leader and Mr. Daniels. Comrade Leader, you sat down and you detailed all the benefits to be had if public servants' pay is increased. The government has economists who should know this. So why do you believe that this action isn't a deliberate ploy by the government to impoverish public servants?
My argument has always been that the government deliberately impoverished public servants. And the reason I say this is that, look, one of the key definitions in politics is about the authoritative allocation of resources. What that means is that the state apparatus, through the government, has the capacity to allocate resources. And how they allocate those resources will tell you whether it's an elitist government or a working class oriented government. In this regard, we see serious resource allocation that permits corruption, that permits the enrichment of a few at the expense of the poor public servant. And to the extent that the government continues to offer extremely low increases to the public servants, it signals their interest in keeping public servants dependent and further impoverishing them. Why would a government believe that a minister needs 1 point something million to survive a month, but a public servant can do it on 100 or 150,000? Clearly, it is deliberate. They know full well that they can reallocate resources in a way that improves the life of public servants. The government is feeding a false narrative, and that narrative focuses on infrastructural development at the expense of people's development. And so, in my opinion, it is deliberate because they have the means at their disposal to give public servants better wages and salaries.
Thank you.
Then, sir, that being the case, why do we insist on making these calls to the government? There must be some other course of action to achieve the same end. Calling in and do nothing.
Okay. Now, your first task really is to sensitize the public. And if the public is sensitized and willing to take other action, they will be led into such action. But you cannot proceed unless first you understand that people understand what is it you're doing and what you set out to do. Or else you can very well be way ahead and people not following. Also, one has to accept the nature of the government we're dealing with. Let me say this to you. This government has reduced what we call the traditional public service because they have certain guarantees and ended up with a lot of contract workers. So one of the problems you have is that, let's assume they become involved in protests. When the contract comes up for renewal, they are in problems. And so the government is using some skillful and nefarious ways to control public servants. And everything you do will have to take that into consideration. Because when you are dependent on the renewal of your contract, it makes you vulnerable. And when you're making political decisions, you will have to look at all the dimensions to decide the course of action you take.
Mr. Norton, Dennis Chabral, Governor.
1 second,
Sir, why doesn't
Mr.
Oh, sorry.
Chabral. I think Mr. Adam Harris had a second question for Mr. Daniels.
I will concede and allow my colleague to ask his question. I can always come back.
All right. After him, we'll take Ms. Bagot, whose hand has been up for a while.
Mr. Norton, Dennis Chabral, Governor. Sir, why doesn't the AKU formally request an engagement for the government to discuss its concerns concerning the revenues and the demands for higher salaries and the payment of the cash rent?
We have before attempted and it proved futile. Now, the government doesn't consult, and therefore what we have to do is to put it in the public domain. I mean, we can write an official letter, ask it, but we know that they are not want to become involved in these kinds of discussion and negotiations because the figures are clear. Every child could see that Guyana can afford a 25% wage increase, possibly 50%. And so they are well aware, and I do not believe that they want to be engaged in any such discussion. Now that we have put it out there, they have the opportunity to say, yes, let us engage, let us consult, and we'll be disposed to do that.
Thank you. Ms. Bagot?
Hi, good morning. Davina Baza with Kite News. Mr. Norton, the 25% salary increase that you're calling for, is it an across-the-board increase? And could you say when you would like this to take effect?
Now, we are on public record of saying we do not like across the board increases, because what cross the board increases do is that they widen the gap between rich and poor. Simply, if the president is getting 3 million a month and he gets 10% increase, that's 300,000. A worker gets 100,000, he gets a 10% increase, that is $10,000. So what it does is widen the gap. We have always been arguing that it should decrease as it gets to the top and significantly increase to those at the bottom in a way that we begin to bridge the gap between the rich and the poor in the public service, etc. You would recall that the AP and UAFC government did implement that, and persons getting above 500,000, I don't remember the exact figures, I think got 1%. Those below got a higher percentage, and at the highest level, if I recall, there were no increases. So we do not believe in cross the board increases because it ends up widening the gap between rich and poor. And like we have said in this presentation, our call is for more money to the public servants to bridge the gap between the rich and the poor. And if we want to bridge and to narrow the gap, it cannot be across the board.
Timeline. She asked about the timeline.
Okay,
The timeline?
Please.
I think it should be paid this December.
Thank you.
Okay, and sir, earlier you mentioned the increase in oil production. How I want to know how sustainable would this increase be given the fluctuation in oil prices and the overall oil sector in the event of, let's say, a spill and so on, and production goes down? How sustainable would your proposed increase be given the volatility of the sector?
The government needs to be told to tell us that. Let me tell you why. We had a system in the Natural Resource Fund in which a certain percentage was going to be there for hard times. And so when prices were down, it would be sustainable. What the government did is to change the law so that they can take all the money. So this question is best directed to the government to ask them why you inherited a natural resource fund in which a percentage was being put aside for the bad times, for low prices and other forms of volatility. Why did you change it and proceeded to utilize 99% of the money? Now, it is poor planning, the lack of vision that will create that problem. Had it been done in a proper way, then you would not have had that problem. There are many countries, Norway among others, with a natural resource fund that has a structured approach to it, and they do not face that problem. They have significant social services that could be maintained. So for me, this is a problem of the government lack of vision and their desire to ensure that there is money for squandermania and corruption. And so it could be sustained if properly managed.
No. So outside of oil, Mr. Norton, I want to know how sustainable your proposed increases would be because you mentioned the NRF and the changes made by government. However, the NRF Act states specific uses for the fund, and paying salary increases is not one of them. So we can't necessarily say the government should use monies from the NRF to pay salary increases. So I'm asking, outside of oil, how sustainable would that salary increase be that you're proposing?
Okay, we did say in this process, it must develop the non-oil sector. The government has to develop the non-oil sector. We have always said that resources from oil should be used to develop the non-oil sector and expand. Remember, previously we pointed out that yes, we believe in infrastructure, but you cannot spend nearly 50% or more of the resources on infrastructure. And mind you, I am of the view that some amount of resources from oil should go to funding public servants. And once that is done with expansion in the non-oil sector and ensuring more businesses come on stream, then it is sustainable.
Thank you. Mr. Antonio Day?
Should I also point out that sometimes we miss that investing in public servants is a human resource investment. And what develops a society, or one of the most critical things to the development of the society, is the development of the human resources.
Thank you. Mr. Antonio Day?
Right. Thank you very much, and good morning to each and everyone. Mr. Norton, I'm not sure if this was addressed already because I joined the press conference a bit late. My question to you is, what are your thoughts about the recent incident with the Amerindian hostel, whereas some persons are trying to politicize the matter? And secondly, given the circumstances between the US seeking the oil tanker from the Venezuelan waters, what are your concerns from a foreign relations standpoint?
Now, let me start with the Amerindian hostel. It's a political issue. And let me tell you why it's a political issue. Politicians sat in parliament and allocated, I think, $225 million to rehabilitate this institution. What it means, it was approved publicly. And if it isn't being implemented and the money was appropriated for it, the politicians who put in for the money, because it's the government that allocated the money, they are duty bound to ensure that it is done properly, and completed in keeping with the timeline. Their failure to do that suggests that they have failed politically, and they have also failed in terms of managing the projects. And so to say politicizing it, to me, is not a welcome comment, because it is politics. I said early in this press conference that one of the definitions of politics given by an early theoretician is the authoritative allocation of resources. To the extent that the parliament, through the budget, used its authority to allocate those resources for the repair of the Amerindian hostel, then it's political. Now, as it relates to the oil tanker, we have made our position clear on these matters. We support a fight against illegalities, but we do not support people operating outside of the confines of the law. And we believe any action taken in international relations should be taken within the confines of the law. The United States has always been in the forefront of ensuring the rule of law. And therefore, at the international level, all the operations should be based on the rule of law.
Thank you. Mr. Millington Granham, if I have it correctly. Stabrook News.
Good day. Milton is the name.
Okay, thank you.
I just have one question. The APNU, but currently there is no elected leader of the opposition. Can you say, Mr. Martin, perhaps, that any one of the persons on the table, can you say what does the APNU plan to do to push the parliamentary agenda currently as there's no elected leader of the opposition?
Let me say this. I don't believe the question of the elected leader of the opposition has anything to do with the parliamentary agenda. Let me tell you why I say that. I became leader of the PNC on the 21st of December 2021. Joe Harmon resigned just after. Guyana was without an opposition leader from December 2021 until April 2022. And we ensured that our parliamentarians pushed the parliamentary agenda. I believe the crux of the matter here is not solely about an opposition leader. It's about the convening of parliament to ensure parliamentary work goes on.
Thank you.
Got you, thank you. But can you say, I just have one follow-up. Can you say what does the APNU plan to do? The parliament hasn't been meeting. What does the APNU plan to do to push so that the parliament can meet? It's been almost 2 months now since the parliament hasn't met.
We will say that we expect that there should be parliament. We have complained even while I was opposition leader about the infrequency of parliament. We believe parliament should be regularly held, but we don't want to be part of the existing situation. We believe that a normal government will convene parliament at the right time. We are well aware that Mohammed was part of the PPP and linked to the PPP, so they are well aware of the approach of the PPP. Our thing is we have a parliamentary agenda. Whenever the parliament is convened, we will push that agenda. But even outside of the parliament, like we are doing now, we will push our agenda.
Thank you. The floor is... Go ahead, Mr. Harris.
That brings me to the question of the pay that you talk about ministers getting. I remember in the early days of the Granger administration, when a pay increase was announced to ministers, there was a hue and cry across the country. There were public protests. You name it, they had it. The government has been increasing the pay for its ministers and parliamentarians, and I haven't heard a squeak. My question is, were the parliamentarians made aware of the increases to the government ministers as they were being implemented?
Well, I thought it was routine. Once you announce the increase, they did it across the board. So parliamentarians were aware. But I would go back further. The PPP had argued against the wage increase and said they wouldn't collect the money, all kinds of things. But they collected the money. And when they came into government, they used the same basis to give them more money, rather than doing what was done under us, the graduated approach, in which he who has a lesser salary gets more, and vice versa. So I don't believe it's an issue of making noise. It's an issue of ensuring that we have a new approach to wage and salary increases so that those at the bottom get more money and those at the top get a lesser percentage in contributing to narrowing the gap between those at the top and those at the bottom.
Thank you. Mr. Antonio Day.
Mr. Norton, I would like to find out from you, sir. I know that you are currently not the opposition leader, but you are the leader of the People's National Congress Reform. And you have mentioned that you understand that we are in a multipolar society. I would like to know, do you foresee in event that the circumstances between Venezuela and the United States escalate, given that we are so close to both countries, particularly the United States? Do you see Ghana gaining more allies? Because we have noted that there are persons from the CARICOM diaspora who have been silent on this issue regarding their support for Ghana. And lastly, my substantive question, do you foresee the Partnership for National Unity working with the We Invest in Nationhood? Because there are some views that in order for there to be an effective opposition, there has to be some form of collaboration in order to hold the government accountable. Thank you, sir.
Let me deal with the last first. We have never ruled out collaboration with WIN. It doesn't mean that we are one and the same, but we believe there are going to be issues on which we're going to collaborate, and there are going to be issues on which there are differences. We are not a robots. We are a political party. We analyze our interests. We analyze the nation interests. We analyze our members and supporters' interests, and we operate based on those interests. And so I'm one who believe in never saying never. But having said that, it should be established that we understand our interests and we will pursue it. Now, as it relates to the question of Ghana and Venezuela, I've been a clear advocate, and our party has been a clear advocate for us to develop a robust diplomatic approach to the Guyana-Venezuela territorial controversy. We had demanded that news advertisements or issues be placed in Caribbean newspapers so that people in the Caribbean know and understand the issue. The government has failed to do that. We had recommended that the government identify envoys, brief them, and send them to capitals to whip up support for the Guyana-Venezuela territorial controversy. They never did that. We had even urged them to engage the local media to ensure that they are well au fait and
Yes.
And
You did not
in
hear the
question,
you did not hear the
You didn't hear the answer to which one?
The
The
first
last
one.
one on.
the last one you were talking about, that went,
I
you
said
didn't hear that one.
I said that this issue is an issue that has to be placed squarely at the feet of the government. I pointed out that we made a number of proposals to the government very early. One, to send diplomatic envoys to capitals to whip up support for the Ghana-Venezuela territorial controversy. Second, we had recommended that they take out advertisements and put information in Caribbean and Latin American newspapers so that we can sensitize people to the Guyana Venezuela territorial controversy. We went as far as even saying to the government, you need to utilize oil resources to become part of your foreign policy tools. Because if you have the resources, you can use it for international leverage. We have made a number of proposals. We said to them they should engage the local press so that they are au fait and can support us on this critical question. So a lot of what will happen will occur because we did not develop a robust foreign policy approach in terms of promoting our position on the Guyana Venezuela territorial controversy. And we seem to believe that it will just happen. So here I'm suggesting that the government needs a proactive approach to ensure that we can mobilize support for the Guyana Venezuela territorial controversy. And then I responded to the question of this multipolar world. And I suggested, yes, there is some amount of multipolarity, but not in every sense. I further suggested that what is happening is a clash of powerful states' interests. And we have got to be able to maneuver and to develop confluences of interests with various states and promote our interests in this complicated international relations setting. I think in essence, that is what I said.
Thank you. Mr. Dennis Shruball?
Well, do you support the United States position that Mr. Maduro is presiding over a narco-terrorist state, and he himself, of course, a $50 million US bounty is on his head, is the head of a narco-terrorism organization called Cartel of the Suns? And secondly, do you believe that the actions being taken by the United States are against the narco-terrorists or ultimately to remove Mr. Maduro? And do you support that move?
Let me deal with the first one. I support nothing that I don't have the evidence to determine whether it is true or not. I have seen no evidence to help me to arrive at a conclusion. And unless we are privy to information that confirms claims, up until then, we will take the position of looking after our interests, which will very well, which most likely will be, we do not want to become embroiled in something which we don't have the information to either substantiate or to disagree.
Thank you.
And the follow-up question, do you believe that these actions are to remove Maduro from power, or they're genuine? Well, you didn't answer the part that.
No, I answered the last part by saying we do not have the kind of intelligence and information to become embroiled in something that we cannot either substantiate or disagree with.
But then, so then what do you make of all of this action?
What do I what?
As a political scientist and international relations expert, what do you make of these actions against Mr. Maduro?
Like I've said earlier, all countries pursue their national interests. The United States probably perceives it as their interest. Venezuela perceives that it's not in their interest. As a Guyanese, we have a Guyana-Venezuela territorial controversy, and I believe that we need to be very careful with who and what we support and when and what we support. And any support will only emerge after we have the factual basis to declare one way or the other.
Thank you. The floor is...
I should say this to you. I've listened to academics in the US, some supporting, some against. What I'm still to get from any side is concrete information to inform the decision we should make. And so in this present state, our task is to pursue our national interests. And our national interest is best served at this time by doing the diplomatic work to keep Venezuela at bay and mobilize the support of all who we can get, including the United States, to support us against Venezuela.
Thank you. The floor is
Yeah.
open. Go ahead, Mr. Harris.
My question has to do, and it goes back to the economy. Sir, how can you explain that the richer the country gets, the poorer the people become? For example, in 2020, the poverty rate was somewhere about 38% or 40%. The oil starts to come in, and the poverty rate, according to IDB, has jumped to 58%. How do you explain this anomaly?
Again, it goes back to allocation of resources. If you allocate the oil resources in a skewed way, in which the family, friends, and favorites are making billions, and wages of workers, benefit to workers, benefit to ordinary people are minimal and are on the decline, then you will have that situation. It's a direct result of poor policy and programs, development and implementation. And once we continue to allocate the resources in this skewed way, the rich will continue to get rich and the poor will go deeper and deeper in poverty.
Thank you. I'll take...
One last question. That being the case, there is a public accounts committee that reviews budget expenditure one way or other. Yes, we know that the government modified the rules governing the meetings of the PAC. Sir, are you in a position to say whether there has been any reaction to recommendations by the PAC, be it for criminal action or otherwise? And before I forget, are you aware of the government going after contractors who literally took money and run? Are you aware that the government went after any of them to recover the money?
Not to my knowledge. In fact, I've seen one that's getting more and more pompous. So I am not knowledgeable. I have no knowledge of them going after any one of the contractors. As it relates to the public accounts, I've seen from the reports I read that there were some attempts to deal with some of the recommendations, but most of the recommendations have not been dealt with.
Mr. Dennis Chabral?
No, that's okay. I need to take over now. So.
Okay. Ms. Bagot?
Hi, I noted that the leader is now taking questions off of his press statement. I have two additional questions. Mr. Norton, over 200 days have passed since the 19.6 billion audit report was completed and handed over to government, but the document has still not been made public. Could you share your thoughts on that, given that it's the largest audit that we've completed to date of Exxon? Of course, in light of the concerns that transpired last time, and also I have another question. Do you want me to go with now, or
let me answer the first one right away. I believe the audit report should be made public. From the inception, we were insisting. Look, remember, the government didn't want what they inherited, the first audit report, and so they were compelled to do it. But I've seen no signs that the government is interested in the auditing, the serious auditing of ExxonMobil or anybody. Now, we did advocate for the training of persons so that Guyana develops the capacity to do its own auditing. We have seen no action in that regard, and that is also indicative of the fact that they seem not to want proper audits done.
do you believe that timeline is justified, though? Over 200 days and this thing hasn't been made public as yet?
No, it isn't. And we have been calling for it to be made public for the longest while.
Okay, sir. And earlier you spoke about the ramp up of oil production. Do you support government's decision to increase production offshore? And are you comfortable with the process? Or do you believe these proposed increases should be properly vetted by parliamentarians before any approval is granted?
I think they should be vetted by stakeholders, a wider cross section. Parliamentarians are one, but these are things I believe should include the private sector. It should include other civil society organization, and it should include a professional core of people who have the capacity to deal with such things.
Thank you.
Okay, and I did ask whether you are in support of the decision to increase production.
I believe that we have to have a plan. And if we have a plan, the government should put out the plan. And that plan should be able to tell us the areas of production they're going in, the benefits, the limitations, the pros and cons. Now, I do not believe in ramp up production without a proper plan, especially in the context of environmental concerns. Mind you, I am one who believes that developing countries like Guyana must be given the opportunity to develop their oil resources. I'm not one who believes that it should stay in the ground for pure environmental concerns. But I do believe as well that the environment must be taken into consideration, and all the plans should have proper environment impact assessment. It should have proper financial assessment, and it should be done in the context of the long-term development of Guyana. In the absence of those things, you're just talking about ramp-up production. It's not done within a proper policy framework or a developmental program, and it is likely to be disastrous. I recall the president telling a journalist, and I quoted it in Parliament, we make up plans as we go along. If we do that, we're in deep trouble.
Thank you.
Finally, from me, Ms. Haynes, can I go ahead with my final question?
Yes, you may.
Okay. This week we saw another resignation coming from Mr. Holder, who cited issues with the leadership of the party. Mr. Norton, are you concerned that these resignations may be reflective of a loss of confidence in your leadership?
I'm operating in a party that has 20,000 members. I have not heard from the party's membership and many of the leaders in the party that they have lost any confidence in my leadership. In fact, what I'm seeing is a lot of people who are disgruntled over not being able to go to parliament or to some council. One of the realities you have to live with as political leaders is that you will have to make decisions. And when you make decisions, some of them, they will be fallout. I sense if some of the people who resign, and I put that in quotation, who are in parliament, they wouldn't resign. So to me, it is not so much an issue of the party and leadership. It's a question of previously a lot of people that came to a political party came to serve. What we have now is more a focus on people coming for immediate benefits, and there will always be some of those problems. At the same time, I must say that when I was speaking with many of the persons on the list, many of them understood that all of them couldn't go to parliament, but there are some who felt that they had a God-given right. In fact, one of them wrote me saying if there was one seat, he should get it.
Thank you.
All right, one last question from me.
Go ahead.
Sir, there have been, I see a lot of the members on the ground working, and some of them are working in areas where people were actually swayed to vote for a party other than PNCR, PNU. What are they telling those people on the ground now that they aren't getting what they ran out from the party to get?
Well, I don't know that you have to tell them anything. They are mostly telling us. Everywhere we go, people recognize, or most people, not all, recognize that some of the promises that were made cannot be delivered and will not be delivered. In fact, in one of my encounters, a person pointed out to me that they were told by one political party that they will get X, Y, and Z. And the minute the election was over, that political party put out that they got to ask the government for it because we in the government. When you make those kinds of promises, but like I've always argued, a lot of what happened in the last election is as a result of the deliberate attempt by the PPP to impoverish certain communities. And unfortunately for the PPP in some regard, and us, that impoverishment led to a situation where he who had money could have purchased votes, and we are where we are. We have analyzed the situation and we have taken the decision as to how we will move forward and do the work.
All right, I'll take my final question from Mr. Antonio Day.
Okay, Mr. Norton, I piggybacking on my colleague, Mr. Harris's question. Given that you would have lost some persons due to the deflections and detractions, what have you, how is your party? I know that it's going through reconsolidation phase. How is that going? And secondly, did you get an update regarding your meeting with GCOM as it relates to the appointment of these commissioners? Because it appears that this situation has been running for a long time.
Well, I made my position very clear. I was in politics when the decision was taken that it's going to be a permanent commission. And until the law changes, our commissioners continue to be commissioners. And when I say our, as opposition commissioners. Now, I've also made the point that Claudette Singh must know that if her contention is that these commissions are no longer legitimate because they was done by a previous opposition leader, then she should go, because it follows ipso facto that she is illegal. And so that is the reality on the ground. As it relates to the work we're doing, it continues. It is not something I want to get involved with at this stage. As people see the manifestation of what we're doing, it will be obvious.
Thank you. I want to thank our media personnel for joining today's press conference, and of course, our viewing audience on all our social media platforms. I know it is the Christmas season, and I implore you to take your time on the roadway and, enjoy the Christmas very moderately without, too many incidents. Do have a wonderful weekend.